folks. Hope you all had a good Christmas and New Year's. I was pretty busy post New Year. Pre-New Year, I was doing a lot of financial ratio work to kind of improve that new offering we have on the standardized financial side. This was something I've worked on for years to try to just take all of this raw financial data that we pull in and try to standardize financials via code as opposed to having to do it manually every time. And then try to do it quarterly so you can do things like calculate real time debt to EBITDA ratios or whatever you want to do. Still got to do a little bit of work on that on adjustments. There's literally thousands of little line items that are not necessarily gap related, but you basically can filter them out via code. So I'll work on that at some point so we can have some sort of adjusted EBITDA number. But besides that, I'm going to walk through a little bit. Post Jan 1, went in and basically did a full code review of the back end, made a lot of improvements. Somebody sent me some Twitter video of or X, I guess these days, of a guy who had a really good way to do fast mapping and stuff like that. So we, took a little bit of that to try to improve some of the front end stuff that was slow, like filtering or just getting wells in the map. I had put like a 500 well limit on the maps because it was just so data intensive. We've improved that now to where I think 5,000 or something like that you can put on there at one time. We added a little bit more functionality as well around, I'll show you at some point, but yeah, let's dive in a bit on what's going on there. I'll say, like, now that I've done a lot of this work, I can kind of get back and doing some of the research I want to do, and probably focus a little bit more on trying to clean up the rest of those financials for the rest of the month at the very least. But I think the apps are in a good place. If you're a regular, just Substack paid subscriber with a $10 a month plan or whatever, you can access this benchmarks app, which, I'll just go into it real quick. What it allows you to do is just real quick filter and get some high level views, but you're not going to get any individual well granularity, and that's by design. Premium clients get access to that kind of thing, and all these other apps and stuff like that. But at least it gives you some carrot to kind of get familiar with the data and understand what's going on. But let's say we chose North Dakota here. It's going to filter real quick and just zoom into the map. I've got it set up to where you can kind of change what you see here if these sections are too much, or if you like a little different view. I kind of like this just Esri light gray in general. But you can kind of zoom into what you want to see. You can filter by different operators and things like that. On the premium type curve app, I think I set it up to where you can do color by these marks as well, or color by these sticks too, but I'll have to go confirm. If not, I'll add that back in there. But say we want to just do real quick some cord wells, and then there's a subset area you want to choose. You can kind of just highlight that there. You have 26 wells here in this little drawn area you drew. If you want to clear that, you can just clear the map selections, but you can apply the filters. It's going to open up the old basic benchmarking, which allows you to do some custom mapping here on the left, so you can create your own chart. I think there's just like a default that's like by operator total cost or something like that, but there's other stuff like capex per foot and perf interval, things like that. And then just a well list of those wells that will go into their spud year. This one doesn't even have a spud yet, so this is probably the most recent one. And then what bucket of capex is falling into. All of these are $10 to $15 million, but like I said, that granularity comes to you if you're a paid client on the premium side. But yeah, that's the basic benchmarking app. If you've noticed and worked on this before, this is way faster, and the app that works a lot better. But yeah, let's go into benchmarking plus. This is the main one that we typically use for searching wells, figuring out stuff. So let's say we wanted to go to, I always like to bring up the Waynesville. Let's do Robertson, Leon, and Freestone, because there is a couple of wells up there. So yeah, once I get done doing that filter, it'll bring in those filters to those wells. We want to get well details. We'll probably go over here to horizontals only, and then I'll do spud date after 01/01/2021. Let's do that. This Texas TNRIS grid is quite insane. So do that. I'll put on the light gray. This is kind of that well list. This one looks like some old Cotton Valley Hillcorp well. It looks like the bottom hole is a little bit too long, so I'll have to go check on that well. But we'll go look at who we have: Comstock and Athon. I don't think some of these are spud that time frame, but check. Yeah. Regardless, here's that well set of basically the Waynesville wells, and you can go through here. I've got this little AI analysis thing that you could try out at some point. It's improved, and you can ask them questions about like this play in particular, and it'll give you some answers. You could actually also, one client asked for this and I added it in. You can just take a list of API numbers from Excel, whatever you have, just even at the very start, and just paste it in here, and it'll tell you, it'll bring up the wells that we have data for on the cost side in that API selection. And this is that, if you're familiar, I have like a single well economics thing that I built out for some pre-calculated financials or type curves I did for, and some economic runs for wells that, I might get from EnergyNet or somebody else that's just new and hasn't been drilled yet. And it's just a valuation of the direct offsets. You can kind of do that in one of these other new modules I've created, but that's still there, and I'll still try to keep that up to date with more recent wells. But that's where you'll select that. There's no wells in this area that are like AFE type upcoming wells, so you're not going to see that in this part. But regardless, we've selected this well set. We got 30 wells in here. I guess I don't have the color by on this one. I think it might just be on one other app. Which I'll show you at some point. Then we'll just go up here and apply filters. That's going to bring up our traditional benchmarking plus, where once again you can do some charts. You can actually, if you have component cost data, you can actually do some, I'll try this to CapEx per foot. So 3336, and then you could group by, call it first production year, and generate the chart. And you can kind of see how they're trending. Like Comstock is, obviously their improvement, their data, their cost has improved over time. Athon's had a good year in 2024. It's up a little bit in 2025, but that you can kind of just start seeing the trends there. Some of Athon is, I think I've written about this, driven by like how short their lateral lengths are and stuff like that. But Comstock has improved, as you can see there. And then you'll actually get that single well granularity here. You can get the single well details on this page. I've actually improved this page a little bit. It's a little bit cleaner and nicer, and you can just kind of drop all these little guys and kind of look at things you want to see. These are G1 filings, W2 filings, whatever on this well, surveys, reservoir penetrations. I mean, this play is hard. Basically, the way I'll put in a Waynesville or Haynesville well is if it says they've penetrated the Bossier, I'm going to just call it an Ablote Bossier. And if it says they've penetrated the Haynesville, I'm calling it a Haynesville. I don't know a better way. I'm not a geologist spotting these wells. So that's just the way it is. Casing design. I want to always pull in casing design because that gives you some clarity if you're an operator trying to say, okay, there are casing costs for this well, and if I have casing costs, I can back into kind of cost per foot on the production string, things like that, because I do code out, or I have a schema where I'm pulling in like production string, intermediate, surface, et cetera, et cetera. You have cost summary details here. If you have cost breakdown, you'll see the data. These wells do not. Don't worry, there's a lot that do. I've changed the forecasting type curve kind of deal here to where if you click down, you can basically create an oil, gas, and water, and you can do it multi-segment. So, you could just do flat for this first month at 80-23 or something like as an example, and just do it for 0.1 years or something, and then it'll just build like that first little down curve, and then you could say, let's go 35,000 at a 0.5, 70 decline or something like that, and maybe call it 65. So you get a generally good fit to that curve. Call it 25-year well life. Who knows how long these things are going to produce, but and then you can view it logarithmic y-axis too, and you could also just look at rate cum or instead of rate time, and that'll kind of give you, this one's looking like 18 BCF well. When you go through everything, then you'll have your production histories, your well tests if I have a well test on the well, and then production revenue volume data. I've added you got the main price you get for the product. This is at the wellhead. It's not if you have some overriding corporate agreement to sell gas to some LNG, whatever. This is what you're getting at the wellhead. But $2.30 in September on the price, but also $1 off on the marketing cost. So hopefully that improves over time. Who knows? But yeah, that's where you're getting that data. There's another app where you can just go pull whatever lease you want and go grab this data if you want. But yeah, that's how this main setup works. You're doing just some investigation. You're not really calculating economics. You're just getting well info on this page. But the one other thing I've added in, close these benchmark plus apps, is type curves. So I had a client ask me about, can they do type curves? I'd pointed them to that AFE economics app, but it only does the wells I'll put in there. So, I essentially said, okay, well, I do collect this data in the back end. There's a few states I haven't added in yet that I'll probably need to add in now. But what it allows you to do is just go look through our horizontal wells and kind of create your own type curve area. Let's say we are looking in, North Dakota, for example, and we want to go with maybe cord. Let's go cord on this. Go zoom in a bit and look at the wells. You can color it by, I don't know, original operator or something like that. And you'll have some other look here to kind of look at what areas you want to look at. Let's say first production year, spud year of 01 to 1, 2020. That filters you down to 6 wells. For the type curve app, I've made it 100 wells or fewer because I don't think more than that's probably too big for type curves. I mean, I could probably relax that at some point, but I don't feel like that's probably too big of a sample set. So I've done it to 100. Say we wanted to just look at this little area here. We'll just draw a square around it. We've got 23 wells in drawn area. Now that there's a less than 100, I can actually apply the filters. It comes up and creates a deal where you can see the wells. I don't have any AFEs on these particular wells in general, so you'd probably have to select a different area or go through my other apps to figure out the cost. But yeah, this is what we're seeing here. You can kind of deselect or select wells as you see fit. If you don't want to include some of them in the type curve, just remove them out of here. You can normalize it by your own lateral length or just keep the simple average. Maybe I will do 10,000 for this one. Then you'll go through, you can build your curve here. Like I said, multi-segment earlier, you just do it all here. Close it down if you don't want to see all the curves. Economic assumptions, say you want to feed into here, shrink, your pricing at the wellhead, or is it GPT gross net? Actually, I don't think it has GPT net anymore on here. Yeah, so it'll be just at the gross variable. You should know what your cost structure is while you're doing this. Taxes, things like that. What your well assumptions are going to be, and then you can go through and calculate economics real quick. Like I didn't do any curves, so you're not going to see any economics on this that are actually real. Then you can export all this to Excel. It'll give you summary of the wells that you put in. It'll give you your type curve parameters. It'll give you the type curve, and then it'll give you the actual cash flow run economics. So the type curve will just be the average production for those wells. It won't be the forecast. The forecast you'll see on the actual cash flow details when you actually do that one. So it's all in there. But then the other thing I added in was the ability to say the curve. This curve, if you saw on the front page, it just sits right here. So I did one on the Western Anadarko with Mewborn the other day. Built out the curve. These are the wells. You see I have AFE costs for these wells, so it'll 10.46 average at 1,000 per foot, basically for this kind of sample set that I had selected in here. Did the type curves, so we've got type curve fit. I can go look logarithmic, rate cum, go look at what the EURs, stuff like there. Put in my economic assumptions for EUR. It's Oklahoma, so different tax structure and things like that I put in there. And then just calculate the economics. So these average wells are 39% IRR on this quick look with that CapEx. Now, these are things that are just like, if you want to do real quick, you get a non-op AFE coming in, and you have an area. If you think of the workflow, you go through, select that area, you see costs that I have in the database there, some of the LOE and price data and differential data. If you don't have the price and differential data, I have price and differential data in the database for several states. So you use that to influence kind of those things. You kind of know your LOE structure. You could swag it usually. And then you can just go run some quick look economics to kind of say, this makes sense for me to invest in. If you have some crazy before payout, you're carrying drilling dollars or whatever, you can at least feed in this base cash flow model and then apply those on the other side. The high level corporate side to kind of say, here's what I could afford to basically offer for this prospect or whatever that I want to invest in. And so that's kind of why I built this out. I don't know if I want to. I mean, maybe someday I'll add in that functionality to do different non-op structures, potentially investing in wellbores, but we'll get there someday. Who knows? I think for now this kind of just works for what you're wanting to use it for. And so yeah, that's this app. I got these two others. I'd say for maintenance, now and again, maybe just delete a few of these type curves just because storage and whatnot, and you don't want a list of like 500 different like type curves running down through here that you're looking at. I do like this color thing. I need to add that to the other apps because it's pretty informative. Give you a good idea of like where they acquired the assets historically. Other app that I added in that, I've walked through some of these other ones before, vendor costs. This is one I need to clean up a little bit more because that data is very raw and very hard to parse through. Product revenues, we've kind of walked through what that is. Template well cost, I did a video of that already. The SEC financial tables is the raw XBRL, but you can go through and look at the income statement for Diamondback in the last quarter and pull all that data in. It also has subcomponent data you don't necessarily see on the high level financials usually. It's kind of summary financials. It'll be like Diamondback's NGL revenue from the Delaware. Like you'll get some of that little split in some of this data. But company profiles is the one I've added in. And I spent a lot of time pre-Christmas kind of reconciling a lot of these financials, which is not easy because you want to try to do it repeatedly with code for a huge amount of companies. But you also have to look through because some person might call their CapEx code in GAAP the same thing they use that another company uses for acquisitions. And so like you got to do some really in-depth looks to make sure you're pulling in the right things. For that single company, it will be consistent over time. But it's not, there are some inconsistencies on some of the things. So it takes a while to go through. Not everything reconciles. I don't know what some of these people are doing in the back end when they're putting these together. So you got to do some work to make sure some missing data point is put in there so you can actually get a fit to it. And then you put your own normalization categories to it and run it over time. Turn it into quarterlies after that. If you don't have quarterlies, typically on the cash flow statements where you'll get something like that. Otherwise, most people report quarterlies on everything else. And then try to create financial ratios from that. Like I said, I haven't done the adjustments or anything too much yet. You'll see stuff like EBITDA and things. But what you'll get is you'll have a few tables here. But like if I wanted to say, look at their total oil equivalent daily production for Oxy over time, like that's that kind of stuff. And you can do cross plots too, where I'll just do, you can do international versus that, or what if I'm just making up random charts here that you can actually pull in and look at. It'll have your link to my balance sheet and things like that. These are all in the backend API too for corporate clients. So if you just want to pull in my normalized financials, Oxy is a bit difficult because the Warren Buffett stuff that they've invested in, but it's there. Or Warren Buffett's investments in the company. You'll have income statement, three statement financials, your calculations like EBITDAX, return on capital, ROE, margins, etc. And then and so you also have production here. Like I said, I already plotted some of that, but I pulled out oil, gas. If they have different countries they're reporting, you'll see that as well. Reserve changes. This will just kind of give you an example of PV10 beginning, end year. That table they usually put at the back of the 10K just over time. Normalize these categories. So at some point I'll have an app that'll basically be able to compare company to company. You can look at things like how much of their reserve change value has been driven by discoveries versus acquisitions, things like that. I think it was Permian Resources or something like that. I was looking at it, like most of their reserve growth has come largely from just buying reserves. So yeah, you can kind of look at that over time. I think War will probably appreciate this. Forward guidance. So whatever I can get whenever they announce guidance, I'll put in like the most recent into this table here. And then the list of well count cost coverage summary we have here. So it'll bring up that benchmarking plus page. So say I click on Loving for Oxy, this will bring up their Loving well count basically, and you can do some charts and stuff on this from the benchmarking plus page. And then historical investor presentations. So I've got a few Crown Rock and Anadarko acquisition proposal, all a lot of their quarterly earnings over time. So if you want to go look at Q1 2025, what they were doing there, you can go pull that here. And then, like I said, I might have mentioned this. I'm building out a way for essentially an AI agent to go through and ingest all of my raw financials. I'll feed it in what's called a RAG, which has transcripts and the presentation database, and it can go through. And I'm also pulling if they have Fitch ratings and the last Fitch analysis on the company, things like that. And it'll just write up a quick report on like trends it sees and if there's some credit risk from covenants, things like that. And it does its best to do kind of what would happen in the next year under various price scenarios and stuff like that, and some financial ratios. I'm improving this over time. It's gotten a lot better than what it was. It was pretty mean at first, but that was just because it wasn't thinking it like wasn't using the assumptions of like these companies have big RBLs to draw on, so they were doing like historical financial credit metrics from other industries. And it's like everybody's going bankrupt. So had to adjust that a bit. So it's gotten a little bit nicer now, but there's still some where it's just like, oh god, I don't know if I want to put this on here, but I do anyway. And then just from a time savings perspective, I'd like some context to the data I'm showing here, and it's not this is not a recommendation on stock buys or anything. It's just kind of like, please take what I've provided you and write something real quick on this company. And I hope people will find it useful, and it saves me time by not having to write all these all the time. I will QC them a bit, but yeah, that's what we're kind of going through here. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 companies done. I'm adding, I think, Diamondback in the next day or so. Each one, if I could spend the entire day doing one, will take a day to get reconciled the first time, and then future iterations will only take me no time at all, just to kind of keep these up to date. It's the initial upfront work takes a while. But yeah, I think that's about it on that side. Maybe some improvements to the clients and things like that. And so, yeah, that's essentially where we are on the app. If you have any questions or anything, just reach out to me at bd@afeleaks.com or sign up for the Substack or whatever, or just sign up and get to work. I'm always around, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you all next time. Cheers.